I'd like to welcome you all to tonight's program. We're going to be talking about astronomy for the making astronomy accessible for various members of society, and especially at club meetings and star parties and such. Tonight, oh, and this is all in conjunction with the 75th anniversary of the Astronomical League. We were formed back in 1946 and with just a couple thousand members, and now we're totaling over 18,000 members, many different benefits, many different clubs. So we have grown quite a bit. This whole year, we'd like to focus on that, and we are presenting a number of topics through through the Zoom meeting that will discuss different aspects of our hobby. Tonight, we have Noreen Grice, who is here to talk about the, let me read this to you. We want to talk about bringing astronomy, making it more accessible to club members and others interested parties through various means. So she's going to talk about that in just a moment. But I'd like to say a few things about Noreen. I won't say I have known her, but I have been in contact with her for various means since about 2014 or so. She has been very, very interested as an interested participant in outreach. And she has helped out with Astronomy Day over the past 12 years or so, bringing new ideas to the whole idea of Astronomy Day, to the whole idea of bringing astronomy to the public. And she has come up with great ideas and has won a number of awards from the Astronomical League for doing so. She's now founder and president of an organization called You Can Do Astronomy, which by the name of it, it emphasizes that people can actually get out and do this stuff and understand it. You don't have to be the guy with the telescope who knows all about this. You can be out there explaining it to people, showing how to do stuff. And so she's very, very much active in that. She has a number of books explaining all this. You can go online and find out all this stuff yourself. But she's here with us today to kind of explain some of that stuff and show us what you can actually do to bring astronomy to the public. So Noreen, before I flub up and really put my foot in my mouth, I'd like to turn things over to you and welcome you to this presentation. And we're all very anxious to see what you have to say.
Thank you very much, John. Before I begin my slides, I'd like to just spend a few moments and tell you a little bit about how I got started in this. Many years ago, when I was an astronomy student at Boston University, I was going into my senior year and also had started working part-time at the Boston Museum of Science. On one particular day, I was taking tickets in the planetarium and a group of blind students were in line. And I didn't know what to do because I didn't know anyone who was blind. And so I asked my manager, what should I do? He said, just help them to their seats. That's all you have to do. And so I did that. I helped them to their seats. And I went into the planetarium console and I pressed the button on the Apple IIe computer to start the program. And the program was automated. So it ran and I sat there and, put on some special effects at the right time. But I wondered what that group thought of the show. At the end of the program, everybody had to walk past the control booth. So as they approached, I came around and I wanted to ask them how they liked the program. I expected they would say, it was all right. But when I asked them how they liked it, they didn't. They said it stunk. Basically, it wasn't very accessible to them. And I remember watching them walk away, and I remember feeling really hurt about that because I thought, the planetarium was the most wonderful place in the world and something went wrong. And it really bothered me. And the next day or so, I remember seeing buses going through Boston that said Watertown. And I remembered hearing about a school for the blind in Watertown, the Perkins School for the Blind. So I went over there and walked around the campus and found the library and went into the library. And I asked the librarian if they had any books on astronomy. And the librarian directed me to a shelf with very thick books. I remember it was a shelf that had all Isaac Asimov books. And I took one of the books down and I opened it up and I saw it was Braille. I didn't know Braille at the time, but I saw it, but I knew that that's what it was. But something was missing. And I asked the librarian if the astronomy books had any touchable pictures. And the librarian explained that tactile pictures were very expensive and not many books had them.
Yeah.
At the same time, I thought about, I grew up with a single parent in the housing projects outside Boston. And I remember there were times where some of my friends would say that I couldn't go, like their mother said I couldn't go over to their house after school because I was a project kid. And I didn't really understand what that meant. It didn't sound good. I mean, I was doing the best I could. I was, watching good shows on TV and getting good grades, but it was like a stigma. I was from the project. And then I thought, these people were blind and probably the Museum of Science didn't expect they would come to the planetarium. Now, I couldn't do anything about when I was a kid and people made an assumption about me. And I wasn't sure quite what to do in this situation, but I thought, you know what, I'm going to try to do something about this. I'm going to try to make astronomy more accessible. And that's what got me started, going into my senior year at Boston University, starting this project, which has actually still been continuing. So now what I'd like to do is share some slides with you and tell you a little bit about some things that you might want to consider and some resources I think would be very helpful. So let me share screen here. Okay, everybody see the screen? Yeah,
Yep.
okay. So I'd like to talk about putting out the welcome sign for accessible astronomy. Oh, now I'm stuck. Okay, hang on. I think I have to get out and back in. I get stuck. All right, let me try again. No, all right. This happened to me once before. So let me try this again one more time.
I tell you, it's always
Oh,
something.
here we go.
Something comes up.
Let me see. I can see it. I'm gonna try this again. I know sometimes this happens and it may be because I'm using a Mac, but let's see. There we go. All right. I knew if I kept with it, I'd get it. Okay. When planning an astronomy event, an outreach event, a star party, I think it's really important to consider who, what, why, when, and where. And what I mean by that is who is your audience going to be for that event? Are you expecting children? Maybe you're doing a program at a school, or children will be coming to your place. Will it be senior citizens or families? What is your strategy for learning? Will your program be a visual experience? Will people be looking through a telescope or maybe watching a slide program? Maybe it'll be hands-on or activity-based program. So these are different ways that you might think about organizing your program. Why? Why are some people not able to participate in your program? And who exactly is missing? It might be a problem with barriers, and it might be unintentional barriers or barriers you're not even aware of. According to the United States Census, 1 in every 5 American citizens has some type of disability. So it's a lot of people, and it's a lot of things to consider. So I'm wondering if the people that are missing from your program may be people that have disabilities that fall into some categories. For example, mobility access. If you set up telescopes, are they accessible? Do you need to climb a ladder to look through the eyepiece? Is a telescope on the top of a hill, maybe in a grassy area? Non-visual access. These are icons you might have seen before, the Braille icon and the person walking with the cane. When you think of non-visual access, you may think of blind or low vision. It's sort of a spectrum. People can be totally blind, have some sight, some vision, or it might be correctable, but it's something to consider. Also, sighted people can be non-visual learners. I remember when I first started in the planetarium in Boston, there was one of my coworkers came on board, and I was showing him how to use the console in the planetarium, and I was pointing to buttons and saying, well, you press this button to turn on the sun, and you press this button to, and he said, what? No, wait. I need to hold the button when you say that. And he put his hand on the knob and said, now tell me, what does this one do? Okay, what does this one do? And so, although sighted, he's a non-visual learner. Emotional access. Now, that's something that we don't often consider, but it is important because, when people come to your program, they may be having a bad day, or there may be an issue that being around crowds can bring up. For example, somebody may be upset, but somebody may have be overstimulated, and you might see people wearing a headset so that it quiets down the area. So this is another thing to consider, their emotional well-being. Alternative and augmentative access, AAC. You might see somebody in a wheelchair or not, but using a device to speak for them. So you may talk to them and they may reply by using this device. And probably one of the most famous people that used a device like this was Stephen Hawking, who used the device even to give a lecture. Non-hearing access, you're probably familiar with these icons, the three. CC is closed captioning. And nowadays we're all used to being able to bring on captioning, just press the CC on your TV or in the computer. When you press it, that's closed captioning that you're making visible. If you walk into a program and the captions are there, that's called open captioning. So, and one thing I did find over the years is, even working in the planetarium, we had a captioning system that people who were deaf or very hard of hearing would request, but also people who did not speak English as their native language found captions to be very helpful so that's another thing to consider. The ear with the slash is assistive listening, and that may be somebody who has a cochlear implant or somebody who needs a device to adjust the volume so that they can hear you better. And the logo with the hands is signing, so it's people communicating by gestures. Companions you may meet. So there are service animals and emotional support animals. Service animals are trained to do a specific task. We're used to seeing dogs, and dogs are guide dogs, but they're actually our guide ponies. I have been to a couple of conventions where very well-behaved guide ponies are helping their person. You may see a dog assisting someone with a mobility issue. Dogs can open doors, close doors. You see there's a dog using the ATM here, and also alert somebody if they're going to have a medical problem. And the little dog on the left reminds me of, there was a woman who would come to the planetarium shows, and she had a little dog, like the little white dog with a little vest, and it said "Dog for the Deaf." And we always welcome that dog in. There's also emotional support animals. This is where you may have heard on the news about that the airlines are not permitting emotional support animals, but you may encounter an emotional support animal in your program. And sometimes people have PTSD, or they have some other situation where it really helps them to have their emotional support animal with them. So where can you find solutions to welcome new visitors and provide more access? So now I'd like to talk to you about two resources that I created and I think would be very helpful for your programs. They are called Everyone's Universe and touch the stars. And these are very helpful for star parties, observatory outreach programs, and even if you have a planetarium to have on hand. Everyone's Universe is available through Amazon, and Touch the Stars is available through National Braille Press. So first, let me talk about Everyone's Universe, and you may recognize the swath across the center with the different icons. Over the years, people would write to me or stop me at a conference and say, you know, I don't know how to teach someone astronomy who is, blind or deaf or in a wheelchair. I mean, I want to help and I just don't know what to do. And then almost at the same time, I would be getting contacted by email or phone or at a conference by people who have a disability who would tell me, I'm really interested in astronomy, but it seems like all these observatories have steps. I can't get up the steps. I'm in a wheelchair. I use a walker. I have crutches. I'm visually impaired. I don't know, where can I go? Is it even possible? So I decided to combine those two topics in this one book. So the first part of this book talks about exactly what people are doing, case studies and solutions for making astronomy more accessible through mobility access, low vision and tactile access, specialized environments, assistive technology, and non-hearing access. And then the second part of the book is that travel guide that shares information from around the country of what different organizations are doing to make their facility and their program more accessible. So for example, let me show you a little bit from what comes from this book. So mobility access. If you go to visit the Centennial Observatory in Idaho, you will find that they have an extended eyepiece available. So somebody who is in a wheelchair can roll up to the telescope and use the extended eyepiece to look through the telescope. So that's one solution that they use. If you go to the McDonald Observatory, there's a telescope that is specifically designed for somebody to observe from a wheelchair, the Wren Macario Accessible Telescope. So those are two different approaches, and just two of many in the book of how people are making their program and facility more accessible. These are two pictures from a star party that I participated in with the Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas. And this was with the National Federation of the Blind convention in town. So the people are blind and they can't see through the telescope, but the people from the Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas provided a tactile tour of the telescopes and explained how the telescopes work. And we did a program about the night sky with tactile images. So even a tactile tour of the telescope is making it accessible. People are participating in the star party. And here's something else. Remember, I talked about non-visual learners may also be sighted and benefit from using tactile images. The picture on the lower left is a picture taken by Jim Strider, who is an outreach astronomer. And he has some of my other books. And and one person is holding a tactile picture of Saturn and touching it before looking through the telescope. So he has people going down the line, touching the pictures, and then looking through the telescope. But the picture on the right is at Western Connecticut State University, and people have the opportunity to look through the telescope while they're touching the tactile picture. So you've got two different methods of input for sighted people using tactile images. Now, where can you get tactile images? That's where the second resource comes from. And remember, I told you about how I got started in astronomy with that group of blind students coming into the planetarium that day. Well, when I decided, I want to try to do something about making astronomy more accessible, what I did is the next day I went to my department chair at Boston University and I said, for an independent study. I would like to write a book about astronomy for the blind. Now, when I said that, you could have heard a pin drop because
Right.
that was very unexpected, and the professor didn't know what to do. Wasn't sure, had never thought about that. But he talked to his other colleagues, and they thought, that's kind of an interesting idea. And so I said, I want to call it Touch the Stars. And so the project began back when I was a senior at Boston University, and the first edition of Touch the Stars came out in 1990. It had been out of print for almost a decade, and finally able to update it and bring it back in print into the largest version ever. And so it is now available through National Braille Press. The pages are in Braille and print on both pages. There's Braille with print on it, so you can read it, sight it, and a person who is blind can feel it. But it includes tactile images of the most common objects and subjects you would be talking about: star patterns, constellations, moon phases, eclipses, planets, the solar system, comets, meteors, nebulae, star clusters, galaxies. So, for example, say you've got your telescope set up and you're pointed at Jupiter. If you have a blind person in the star party, you could open the book to the Jupiter page and say, this is what we're looking at right now. Here's what Jupiter looks like, and explain the bands and the great red spot. But remember, a sighted person can also benefit from it, and people just like touching tactile pictures. They think it's kind of cool. Say you're doing a program about the moon's phases. Okay, we've got moon phases in here you can talk about. Let's say you're going to point the telescope to the Ring Nebula. You could show them what Lyra looks like and where the Ring Nebula is and what the Ring Nebula looks like. So the image on the right is just a sample page to show you what it looks like with print and Braille on the same page. Now you notice that there's captions in Braille on the pictures. You don't have to worry about not being able to read Braille, because the book comes with a little booklet in a pocket inside the book that has printed versions of all the pictures, and it tells you exactly what it is. So there's always a caption in print in the book which explains what it is, but there's also this accompanying booklet that has just a printed outline and shows you exactly what each picture is in the book. So now is the time. We all have special needs, and we all can make astronomy more accessible. And when you make materials accessible for one group of people, you are making materials accessible for many people with different learning styles. Just think back to the original idea of the curb cut on the sidewalk. It was for people in wheelchairs being able to get off the sidewalk, across the street, onto the next sidewalk. But everybody uses it. People with baby strollers use it. It's the same with ramps entering buildings. Everybody's using it. It's the same with, if you go to a museum and there's a map and there's a large print version, a lot of people are grabbing that large print version because it's just simply easier to read. So accessibility is accessibility for everybody. And again, I think these two resources would be very, very helpful for all the astronomy clubs to have, to be able to read exactly what to be able to, how to make the different programs accessible for different disabilities, and also being able to quickly pull out tactile pictures from Touch the Stars at a moment's notice. Being proactive is so much more rewarding than having to, say, oh, I wish I had that book with me, or I wish I had that picture. I just needed it and I just didn't have it at that moment. So that's what I wanted to talk about. And let me see, let me stop this here and just show you the size of these. So Everyone's Universe is a paperback, this usual paperback, and Touch the Stars is in a binder. It's hard plastic on the front, and you've got let's see, yeah. So here's, well, I don't know if it's going to show up too well, but the moon, and in the back is the printed guide that you just pull right out of the pocket. So it's just real easy. If you have these, you are prepared. And I think you will be able to help a lot of people and make it more interesting in different ways than you might have imagined. So I thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Noreen. I don't know if it's a question. Yeah, it is a question. I think a lot of us would like to do this stuff. We'd like to show people with different disabilities, show them the stars, looking through a telescope and all that. But I think some of us, including myself at times, are kind of embarrassed or feel awkward. You know, what am I supposed to do here? I shouldn't. What should I say? You know, what should I say to this person? I don't know how to do this, and I don't want to look like an idiot. I don't want to embarrass anybody. But you know, what do I do? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes, I'm glad you brought that up, because I know I'm very active with the National Federation of the Blind, and we've talked about this in our meetings, where people are afraid to say, common words. Let's go see this. I want to watch this. Can I show you this? Now, these are words that are used. These are common words that are used by everybody. So if somebody was blind and came to the telescope, I think what I would do is I would open, say we're looking at Jupiter, I would open the Touch the Stars to Jupiter, and I would say, I have a touchable picture of Jupiter. Would you like to see that? And what seeing is using their fingertips and seeing it in their mind's eyes. So when somebody is touching something and examining a picture of Jupiter, they are seeing it in their mind. Right? And you can explain, okay, so this part here, that's the great red spot, and then to talk about what exactly that means. If somebody is coming in a wheelchair, it's okay to ask somebody, I have a telescope here. What would you need to be able to look through the telescope? Or, ask them, how can I help? I think it's better to ask somebody, and rather than to be nervous about it. I think it's just like in anybody, you'd say, how can I help you? I'd like to show you Saturn. Are you able to look through the eyepiece, or let's figure out another way to do that?
Right. From my experience has been that if you treat an impaired person, doesn't come out right. See, I'm embarrassing myself right now.
Yeah.
If you treat somebody the way that you would like to be treated. And everybody realizes, there's going to be some awkward moments and stuff, but if you treat them with respect, it's
yes, John. Yes, and John. Yeah, and another. I'm really glad you said that too, because you said treat somebody the way you would like to be treated. I also consider treat somebody the way they would like to be treated, and ask them how they would like to be treated, because sometimes it's a little different, and people will be very happy and appreciative that you've done that and gone that extra step.
Yep. Hey, Noreen, this is Peggy Walker. How are you?
Hi, Peggy. Good.
Yeah, nice to see you. Just a couple things that I thought about was, number one, astronomers are aging out themselves and having eye issues. I updated, the Cornell, status, and the numbers have jumped by each state. And I started thinking about what happened here, but it's just like, kind of like the Vietnam generation. But when I went to a star party, a lady was saying people in the club had, diabetic situations. They had cataracts coming, and they were upset that they were going to have to give up this hobby that they love so much. And so we had talked, and I had turned her on to your books and stuff, and how to make maybe some tactile things for the club. So they went back and they had a quilting circle of women whose husbands were astronomers. And while they were having a meeting, I showed her things I made. They wound up making them so that these men would not feel that they had to opt out of this hobby. You know what I mean? And the other thing is, can you talk about the Swell Printer? You can take the image and then do the thermal printing off of that.
Yes, I can. So, and I do have a machine too. Now, a swell machine is called a thermal expansion machine sometimes, or a picture and a flash machine, and they have different names. It's a special kind of paper that we put into the machine. Now, the paper has ammonia microcapsules on it, and in order to and the machine is kind of like a toaster oven. Basically, you put the picture in, and it comes out puffed up. So in order to do that, it has to be a black and white image. It really can't have any grayscale. It's either puffed or not. You have to photocopy the image onto the paper, and the photocopy has to have enough carbon. Some printers just won't work. I actually went to Staples one day with some swell form pictures, and I made a photocopy using, the Brother, the HP, all the ones down the line. They said that was okay. And then I went home and I ran them through the machine, and some of them would not raise up at all. It has to be it has to be a certain amount of carbon in it. It's susceptible to humidity. If somebody has a wet hand, it'll be ruined.
Right.
So if I do that, what I do is I put them in the page protectors that, you can get those from the dollar store for 10 for $1. And that's really what I would suggest if you're using, if you're making pictures with a swell form machine. Once you make that picture, slide it right into the page protector, so that if somebody does have a damp hand, they're not, wiping out Saturn's rings by
Right.
touching it. But that's another reason why the pictures from Touch the Stars are good, because they cover so many topics that picture may already exist in the book.
It was just the excitement of them, watching you be on the moon, take a picture of that, then you go in and to Photoshop or Adobe, whatever, convert the image, print it out, and then put it right through a thermal printer and say, here, touch that. You know what I mean? To me, I thought my brain melted when I saw that in your book.
Yes, yes, and I can tell you from an experience. In 2007, I was teaching astronomy at the National Federation of the Blind, was having a youth slam at Johns Hopkins University, and so we had a star party, and we had the local. And I can't remember the name of the group. I wish I could, but from Maryland, and they came. And so we were out. So I had the swell form machine and a laptop just inside this library building, and they were all up on a hill, and it was very muggy, but they all had flash drives. And so I had kind of a runner. Somebody would take some pictures, put it on the flash drive. Somebody would run it down to me. I'd be in the library and then put it in Photoshop, copier, print it out, run it through the swell form machine, and then somebody would run it back up. Now, a funny thing happened then. So there was the group of blind students were there, but we didn't realize there were also some summer students just from Johns Hopkins were there, and they didn't know what was going on. And well, college students, there's a crowd, so they're going to go and see, what is it, free food, something's going on. So they came over, and it was, dark out. So it was just like, it was kind of like a mosh pit. Everybody was just standing around. And so these students were up there, and they're like, what's going on? And then some of the blind students said, here, feel this. And they hand them the paper, and they're like, oh, what's this? So they're like, oh, it's like, I don't know if it was the Ring Nebula, or one of them had a satellite going through it. Anyway, they're like, oh, that's what that is. And so we just kept running back and forth up with the different pictures. And so it occurred to me afterwards that these sighted students had no idea that the other students were blind. They had no idea that this was unusual to be touching pictures. And we had another star party the next night, and they came back. And then I thought, that's what they're going to think when they go to star parties. Where's the tactile pictures? So, and it worked for them. They were very happy about it.
Noreen, I have a question from one of our viewers.
Okay.
How do you attract the disabled to your events? How do you reach them or advertise?
Yeah, so I would say the best thing to do is to contact if there's a group. For example, the National Federation of the Blind would have activities in different states because they have chapters in different states. There may be an autism group, there may be a deaf club. I would contact instead of just putting it out there saying, oh, we're going to have a star party for the blind, you want to work directly with the groups that are out there, and that will actually help you form relationships. And that's where you can really get people excited, and then maybe they even join the club. So that's what I would say. I would say to reach out to the organizations, and then through their network, they will advertise it, and they will work with you. And then you'll learn from each other, and it'll be a really great situation.
Okay, does anybody else have any questions?
Maureen, have you seen these?
Well, I've been looking at them while you've had them set up.
These came in a toolkit from the Night Sky Network.
I'm not familiar with that. Okay.
And they have, I don't know if you can see them very well. They do have Braille writing on them. It's the moon and then one of the craters. I think it might be, I'm not sure. And then I mounted them in a nice thing to carry in star parties. And kids come up, they look at the telescope. I ask them if they want to touch the moon, and then they touch the moon.
Yeah, that's a great idea, and that's similar to what I'm thinking with Touch the Stars, being able to have the resource available and then welcoming people to come and touch it, and not just people who are blind, but anybody. Yeah, just say, would you like to touch this? And people will be really, really happy to do it.
Yeah, kids are really fascinated by it. I forget which toolkit it came in, but one of the Night Sky Network toolkits.
Okay, I'll have to look at that. Oh, but that actually reminds me, because I don't know, I know a lot of star parties have been on hold because of COVID and concerns. So I think that may be thermoform, which is similar to what is in Touch the Stars. Those you can wipe down, but not the swell form paper. That'll wipe it out.
Yeah.
So you don't want to use swell form paper if there's any concern about people, but you should always put the swell form paper in a page protector regardless.
Yeah, they're formed, I'm sure.
This is Carol Orange here.
Hi, Carol.
Hi. I want to say, first off, it's really a different world to try to realize what we all take for granted, that they see exactly what we, the blind, do. On the side, I volunteer for reading newspapers to the blind through a service in Kansas City. And what we've been encouraged to do is when we're reading those articles, try to come up with articles that have pictures attached, because it gives them a much better view of what's going on if there's some visualization that they can relate to. And it really is a challenge to try to put in words what's in a picture on a different scale than what we're talking about on astronomy. But I find myself really having to be very creative, because what we all take for granted, you have to really very specifically point out in that situation. Just one small example of how we really need to take extra care and making sure we go overboard, if anything, to make sure we're covering the bases.
Yes, and thank you for bringing that up. Pictorial description is super important. You want to describe things as accurately as possible. And sometimes if if there's a shape and you don't have the words for it, you can always ask somebody to hold on to your hand as you outline it with your hand. And, you can use your body to say the shape is like this, or it's asymmetrical like this, and explain it that way. I remember one time I went to a NASA conference, and it was about accessibility, and they had us use sleep shades so that we couldn't see. And there were people in partners, and so I put the sleep shades on, and another person was explaining. We went to a museum I had never been to, so I was listening, and we went in, and she said, watch out because there's a fountain you may fall into. And I was thinking, oh my God, where are we, in a lake or something? And we went into a certain room. She was describing dinosaurs, and I said, oh yeah, I've seen those kind of dinosaurs in museums. I know what that's like. And then suddenly someone said, okay, let's all meet in the such and such room. And she left. And I'm standing there with the sleep shades on. I'm like, wait a minute, so I took them off. I had no idea where I was. Everything looked completely different than how I had pictured it. She said there's a tall dinosaur. Well, yes, but it had a long neck, and there were pieces missing from it, and that got me really sensitive to the importance of pictorial descriptions and really as accurate as possible, because what you're saying, what's coming from your mouth may not be what's going into the person's head. And that's why tactile pictures are also very good. So it's like a level playing field. Here's a picture of Saturn, and this is how the rings surround the planet. And, we're all looking at the same thing together.
It's a right brain, left brain type of thing also.
Yes. And people have different, from people's experience, they'll have different visualizations of what you're saying. So if you can have some kind of a model, and also, NASA does have 3D models. There's a NASA page with 3D models, and if you have a 3D printer, you can print them out, or I think there's organizations that will you can pay and they'll print it out for you. So that's another thing to have.
Noreen, near the beginning of your talk, you're talking a little bit about wheelchair accessibility. And I think you showed one or two photographs of a telescope with I'll call it an eyepiece extender. So it would lower the level down, everything, lower the whole unit down to the person in the wheelchair. Do you know if those are commercially available, or were those homemade?
Yes, that extended eyepiece is DFM Engineering. And they won an award in 2005, I think, from Sky and Telescope for Spotlight on a new product. Yep.
It's listed in your book, in your resources. On your book, everyone's all of the resources and where you can get them are all in that book. Yeah.
And where do you get the book?
Okay, so this is the book that has for all the different case studies and resources. Everyone's Universe is on Amazon. So there we go. Maynard has it.
See, my copy is much thinner than Noreen's copy.
That's right.
It fits in my pocket.
Okay. Yeah. So the Everyone's Universe is on Amazon, but the Touch the Stars is only available through National Braille Press. You won't find this on Amazon.
Now that book, Touch the Skies, or Touch the Stars, I'm sorry, is reasonably priced, $35. They ask for a donation as well, and there's shipping costs, I guess. But my point is that every club could easily have this available for their outreach programs and have it handy.
Yes.
It wouldn't have to be one person. In fact, it probably would be better for every club to invest. It's a small investment.
And it actually costs a lot more than $35 to make this book. National Braille Press gets subsidy funding from foundations. So I don't know the exact cost, but it could be, even double the cost of what it really costs to make this book. It's a great book.
A good reason to click donation when you purchase the book.
That's right.
Yeah.
When it went out of print, it was the most requested book. I had the people, over the years kept saying, where is that book? And like, finally, we got to get that book back. It just was, it's just such a good book and so useful to have.
Hi, my name's Jill Zomp. I live in Pittsburgh. I actually have a husband who's blind. I kind of have a very unique perspective on this. I wanted to let you guys know, first of all, I believe it's the University of Ohio out of Columbus that actually has a equipment share where they have done the 3D printing, and they have the inverted globes so you can kind of feel the night sky. I think they also have special layouts. I don't know if they shared them with NASA or if NASA has their own, but those were very cool and unique. Noreen, just as somebody who obviously lives with somebody with a disability, my husband's been blind for a long time. I work with people with disabilities. I want to just thank you for seeing a need and filling it, because most people just turn and look the other way rather than trying to, welcome people who might have a different type of ability. So I don't know if you get that enough, but I want to thank you very much for that. And also, John, I know I keep hearing you asking, how do you get people to be included, and what do you do? And the best thing to do is ask them as they're there. Don't be afraid. Stigma is everybody with a disability's worst enemy. You're right about the 1 in 5 people who have a disability. And there's somebody out there who said, everybody that does not have a disability right now, it's just temporary. As we all age, we all end up with some kind of ailment or another. So don't be afraid to ask, because you might learn something too. Also, because my husband's blind, I am an avid astronomer. I always joke and say I picked the one hobby that he can't do. But I do talk to him about it. And I also have found that kind of bringing things to scale is another way to really involve people who are visually impaired. Is, just saying, okay, this is, as big as it is from the earth to the moon. Now, from here to the other end of the room is from the earth to the sun. So they can kind of conceptualize, scale of things. And then I, like to blow their mind with the summer triangle and things like that, but you got to work up to that one. And then also for your outreach, you can also reach out to your OVR, so your occupational vocational rehabilitation. They work with people of all kinds of different abilities, and they may be able to help you with local clubs in the area, because, they work with the local people, so they know about, whether it be Autism Speaks. And then there's always a division for blind and visual. So it's usually BVS or something like that, blind and visual services, that you'll be able to reach out to them as well if you guys are really looking to expand the program to people with disabilities. People with disabilities, for the most part, they're not overly entitled, and they're not going to yell at you if you're not completely accessible. They're just looking for people to try to include them. So what you guys are all trying to do is amazing. I'm going to be spreading the word of this to everyone. I actually also looked up your books while we were sitting here, thinking about maybe, a nice birthday present or something for my husband. He'll say, oh, great, thanks for your hobby as my present. But this is wonderful. And I cannot express enough gratitude for all the things that you guys are trying to do to really include people with disabilities. So every single one of you, do not ever be afraid to just say, what else can I do to help you? Mm-hmm. Because even if you can't, just the fact that you tried makes a world of difference for these people.
Right. Well, thank you, Jay-Z. For the people who...
Jill, sorry, I put my name on here. It's Jill.
For the people who came in a little late, I want to remind everyone that we're going to have this on the League Facebook page and YouTube channel in a few days. So if you missed something in this program, you can go back and check it out again. I know it's a big topic, and a topic in which a lot of us haven't really done anything about before. But now, here's an opening, a chance for us to try to do this. Are there any more questions before we close the session here?
I was just going to comment that one local club here, Delaware Valley, for the pandemic, they were setting up distance viewing with Revolution Imagers, and that would also work very well for people in wheelchairs that can't get to an eyepiece. You have a little 6-inch screen rather than an eyepiece. I've even had short people that can't get to an eyepiece. And if we start using a little, something like a 6-inch screen, but if it's 3 feet off the ground, anyone can see it, including kids and people in wheelchairs. So.
Yes, and that's just a great example about how making something accessible to one group makes it accessible to a lot of people. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's great.
Noreen, this is Bill Dillon in Virginia. I got a question related. What are our educators in our universities and colleges doing about educating folks who are interested, as you were back when you were going through college, but have an impairment that prevents them from taking these kind of courses? Has there been progress in the past few years that you've seen? And what are they doing?
Well, I mean, sometimes I will get an email from a professor about, what can I do? Sometimes it's the college student who will email me and say, this is what the professor says I need to do. What can we do? You know, all the textbooks, when someone who's blind needs a textbook, they're able to get it put in Braille, but it takes time, and you know they have to request it months ahead. There's some planning, but I know that a lot of the universities have Office of Disability Services where they have Braille printers and they have different accessible devices. And so, you know, I don't know, I can't speak for all the college professors, but I am a member of the National Federation of the Blind Science and Engineering Division. I go to that, we have a meeting once a year at the conference. And the last time we were there in person in 2019, several people came up to me. They go around the room and everybody introduces themselves, because otherwise some people won't know who's sitting there. So we all go up and down the row and introduce themselves. And several people turned around to me and then said, I took astronomy because of your book. I took Touch the Stars with me to school, you know, and I'm a scientist or an engineer because I had Touch the Stars years ago. So I know that, you know, when I started, there weren't any blind students taking astronomy. And now there are students who have become scientists. They may not be in astronomy, but they have become scientists because they believe they could, and I believe they could. And so I think that progress is being made. I think we need in general more people to take STEM courses, but I think that things are going in the right direction.
Could we get her book in our bookstore, the Everyone's Universe, in the League bookstore? Is that an option?
Yes, we're discussing that right now. In fact, a way to successfully do that.
Because I was going to write my article about that for June. So I didn't know if you guys were if it was done or what you guys were
I
doing.
haven't finalized it, but it's an excellent idea. I think it would work out very well.
Okay.
Based on our microcosm here tonight, there's certainly the interest and need for that.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, anybody else have questions or comments? Well, if not, I want to thank Noreen for taking her time to come out, stay at home and do this for us. Yes, thank you.
Great job.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I do appreciate being able to participate in this.
Well, we knew each other from Astronomers Without Borders, and we worked on a people with disabilities group for about 3 or 4 years and planned things for the Global Astronomy Month together with Mike Simmons and the crew and stuff like that. So that's how I know her, from like 22 or something like that. So yeah. We never see each other in person, but I emailing back and forth. Yeah. So
well, Noreen,
thanks so much for doing this. Really appreciate that. Really do. Yeah.
Noreen is definitely interested in outreach and trying to get the word out to as many people as a variety as possible. And this is definitely a field in which we might be able to do something with.
Great.
Okay.
Great. That sounds great.
Unless that's it, gotta sign off now. And thank you all for attending. Noreen, yourself, and all the other participants there. Thank you for having your questions, and thank you, Noreen, for answering them so clearly. I think we all came away with much better understanding of the whole issue involved and how it's really not so daunting. It's a field that we could all get into. Okay. Well, thank you all again, and we'll be